You're live.
A little off the beaten path, but no band breakup list would be complete without a black metal band. So number 3 on our list is Mayhem, plagued by suicides, murders, church burnings, and all around other black metal-y antics. It's a miracle this band has survived its many iterations, and they're still going strong today. But around 1993, with 3 of the 4 band members either being murdered, dead, or in prison, yeah, it's safe to say that Mayhem is one of the worst unintentional band breakups in history. Here's what happened.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this
Tim,
week's
come on, man.
edition
What were you doing there?
Way too many. Hey, it's your fault. No, I blame you. What the hell is going on? I thought we had somebody else this week. Man,
Where's
that's
our
it. I
guest?
quit.
Where's our guest?
Yeah.
Tim. Always
I've had
pointing
it.
fingers.
You guys think you're all high and mighty with the name Tim? You think you're better than me because your name's Tim?
Well, I mean, we get Dr. Jesse. How could we get even more than Doctor in the house?
But it wasn't a boy band breakup.
Well, it was, but then it wasn't. But it was. But yeah, reverb, whatever. Hey, all right. Actually, let's do the real introduction. All right, everybody, hold on one second. Let's come over to where we're like supposed to be and do the. All right, enough of that.
There we go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to, gosh, it's been, I don't even want to say this year, months, the summer first edition of Team Tim. Obviously, Tim, and Dr. Jesse over here. We know it's been a long time. We've kind of we'll get into that in a few minutes. Mr. Schnurr, where the hell you been all summer?
Been a windy road, man. I move in, vacation, New York City, putting in the rearview mirror. So moving out to the burbs, and this house is a little bit of a fixer-upper. So
A little bit.
A little bit.
I can see all the dust flying. Is that hammer and nails in the background? What's going on?
It's been that dusty. I had to buy a gas mask. I looked like a hazmat suit. So
I thought that was the new Thunderdome theme you're playing with.
I scared the new neighbors when I mow the lawn with it.
That's super funny. Jesse, my friend, how have you been? It's been a hot minute since we've been here on our weekly live stream.
I know. I thought you guys didn't like hanging out with me anymore. I was getting sad. No. I've seen you, Tim. We've gotten together at ChannelCon. Made a stop by the compliance scorecard booth or lack thereof.
What a debacle that kind
and then some family vacations, work travel. It's just been a crazy summer. Yeah,
yes, but it's been a good summer. I know here in New Hampshire, it has been probably one of the hottest summers that I can remember. And we, with the grandbabies and all, our upstairs with the office, we don't get heat or air conditioning up here. So literally with the AC on, it's still 71 degrees in here. So we was all right, let's get mini splits. So I talked to the guy in May to get mini splits to get air conditioning. Wait, is this third-party risk management? Because that's probably what we're getting into, right? It's too hot up here. And he's like, yeah, we can install in September.
Yeah. Get in line, buddy.
Get in line.
This is New England.
Get in line.
I'll give you air conditioning.
It's funny because I had a similar thing at the last house, and I ended up going out and buying $1,000 worth of tools and doing it myself because the wait was so long.
And that's the thing. I was like, oh, honey, we can do this ourselves. And she's like, yeah, how much money is it going to cost us in tools that you'll use once? And I'm like, yeah, but I get to buy new tools.
Yeah, it's high voltage too, right? So we just bought a electric vehicle, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do it myself. Not a good idea. 60 amps.
Two-phase, what's that?
Yeah.
You know. Oh, also, yeah, and that was the other part too. Was like, oh, we have to completely redo our entire electrical panel and outside meter, and then call the electric. It's just
File
yeah.
a permit.
Speaking of third-party management, right? But before we get into that, we know it's been sort of a hot minute here. Let's Jesse, tell us what's going on in your world these days.
Well, you all know me. I'm Jesse Miller, founder of Power PSA Consulting and creator of the PowerGrid vCISO system. We exist to help MSPs crack the code for vCISO profits.
Wow, you've like nailed that. Like, have you been working on that pitch? I mean, awesome job. Hey, we were just talking about power, but from a different perspective, right? Head on over to what? PowerGrid. Wait a minute. I have that. Oh, right here. PowerGrid, right?
PowerGrid.
PowerGrid. Hey, Tim, how you been? I know you were working on the house.
Yeah, no. And Tim, I want to hear the story about the missing booth. I'm assuming something didn't show up in the mail. I feel a lot of FOMO sitting out on these great conferences this summer with the channel folks. Jesse, you're everywhere, right? Tim's everywhere. Every conference speaking. vCISO, loving the trajectory of compliance and governance and vCISO, and really what the three of us are about on the show, shifting left and getting people to be proactive and really digging in and driving some of this governance. So I think that has a little bit to do with it, what we're going to talk about today. In the meantime, this summer, I have been a little MIA, and that's why we're pointing fingers here on our recent weeks. Hopefully we'll fill the schedule in the fall here with some excellent episodes. But I have been, doing some studying, working on some cyber certificates, and some of these tests are hard. They're real hard, and we'll see where I end up here. I think in the fall. So, but Tim, why don't you do an intro, and then we can jump into third-party risk management, the biggest risk out there.
I know. Hey, thanks for that. Tim Golden, founder and CEO of Compliance Scorecard, where we did not keep our booth in compliance. I'm kidding. No, where we help your MSP have the risk conversation with your customer, being able to operationalize your vCISO practices, and maybe alongside our good friend Jesse, get some training over there and then come operationalize it over here. Or you can operationalize it with Jesse too. All right, enough of my shameless plug. Tim, you want to hear the story of ChannelCon? Yeah. So, we have 2 booth setups. That in and of itself was a disaster. We came back from MSP Geek, whatever it was, and one of our 2 booth boxes arrived back here, back at, HQ. The other one was MIA. And we had, a conference coming up literally like a week or 2 later. And so I had to scramble, buy another booth, blah, blah, blah. So that was like July. Great. Everything is kind of in shipping. And I was like, oh, the booth that I bought a new one, the old one showed up the day after the new one showed. So now I'm like, okay, I got 2. When I was like, I can just ship the old one to the next conference, which was ChannelCon. Yeah. Incident response, disaster. Like, I just took the box, ripped the labels off, make sure it was taped, put new labels on it, and out the door it went. And of course, it arrived at ChannelCon. And as Jesse and our good friend Kevin were helping me set the booth up and prepare, and we got everything all out and the frame ready, there was no backdrop. So the backdrop never actually got packed in that box. It was, I don't even know where the hell it was. I didn't actually find the backdrop until last week. It was buried in a suitcase someplace.
But that conference did end on a good note, didn't it?
It did. It did. I did leave a day early, so I was a little bummed to miss like the bee thing. They had some bee guy there or whatever it was, bees. However, I had a really good reason to leave early. You see, my daughter had our second grandchild, our grandson. So I packed up, flew home, and was here in time for us to have the arrival of now the blue hat because of our grandson.
Nice.
I switched from pink to blue. Now I need
Love
to
it.
get one that's split down the middle, half pink, half blue. So yeah, Tim, what happened was way back in May, we did not follow our own compliant rules to make sure that boxes and stuff were packed the way they should be and didn't run through our compliant checklist. Hence, the other end, we were non-compliant. We had no booth. I had to quickly scramble and bring one out. So that's the story, Mr. Tim, which kind of dives into this concept of third-party management, of risk management that is outside of our control, which is a little bit about what we were talking about. Did the band break up? No. There's been lots of outside forces coming in and affecting and imposing risk on Team Tim every Friday. Right, Jesse? Right, Tim? What are some of those risks that we've faced personally or corporately that have not allowed us to run Team Tim?
Moving.
Oh, I would. Yeah. I think it's interesting as you talk about risks and what are the ways you treat those, right? You accept, avoid, mitigate, transfer. And I think we accepted some risks, or at least I know I did, to the show because of some commitments that I deemed a little bit higher priority. And that's not to say I don't like you guys, but when you have a family thing or you have a corporate thing that you have to take care of, you can't always make it, right? And so the summers, which are interestingly seeming to be slow, typically were super busy for me. And so I think the risk treatment was what impacted the show on my end, at least for the last couple of months here.
Got to prioritize, right, Jesse? I mean, you should be on paternity leave, but no paternity leave for business owner.
No, you get like a week, if that.
And a farmer for that. You don't even get it 24 hours on a farm.
Exactly. What about you, Tim? You mentioned moving. I mean, there's got to be some risk in that.
Yeah, no, it was moving and getting the place ready and just a lot of things going on. I got some things working in stealth, so we don't want to disclose all of our risks, but so trying to get the thing going out there and the whole paying the bills and whatnot. So and then summer is just you want to enjoy summer. I know Jesse's got a short window of summer up there. New England's got a short summer. So it's been tough, but I'm glad we're talking about this because it's every time there's a big news headline for cyber something, right? Like what does it always come down to, right? It's how much of it's actually your own like internal fault or like what are outside forces that are driving that. So it's almost impossible to manage. You can certainly reduce the pain, but if you want to break into the strongest, best, most expensive cybersecurity programs, where do you go after? Are you going to try to go out after their perimeter and their front door? Or are you going to go after the third-party software, right? So, please, Tim, TPRM. What does that mean?
Oh, you're asking the acronym guy that's highly dyslexic that has only had a little bit of it. Oh, you guys haven't seen this yet. I love my Yetis, right? I just got a whole set of new Yetis because you know how I love them. I'm like
I would have gone with the generic cheapo ones.
No, they're not what just happened on my camera? There we go. No, it's got to be Yeti or nothing. So, third-party risk management, right? Yeah, I have lots of thoughts on this. I'm gonna, we get asked a lot, like, what are you doing for vendor due diligence, third-party risk management? What are you doing for, how do
Yeah.
you blah, 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 right? And so, when I was at the MSP, one of the things that I focused heavily on was what is our, like, all the way back to not just what is the procurement process, but what business problem are we trying to solve before we even get all the way down to the end of doing our vendor due diligence.
Mhm.
Right, Jesse, I'm sure you've got a lot of conversations and a lot of thoughts on what business problem are we trying to solve, and then how that leads into third-party risk management.
Yeah. Yeah. Third party risk management is interesting because I think it goes back to the business. A lot of times you're solving a business problem with a risky third party vendor and there's literally no other game in town. So what do you do then? Right. There's clients that I work with directly that, it takes, especially in manufacturing, that it takes years to build up these relationships and get these things spun up. And then all of a sudden you find out that they don't have the best cybersecurity program. What do? Very difficult to make that decision because it's a much greater risk to the business to go take 3 years of a step back for production than it is to try and work with the current manufacturing partner that you have.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I used to work for, doing internal IT, web work, whatever, help desk, all the fun things for a fairly large global distributor of manufacturing stuff. And they had this old system. It was called MaxDB. And the database had an 8-character limit in the fields. And every data point had to be entered in all caps. So if you think about this, you could only ever have 8 characters and it had to be all caps. So if you wanted to build a product database off of your ERP, you couldn't do it, right? And so part of what we were trying to do is build the web catalog. And
Tim,
how do you
what about
describe
complex passwords, right? Like you just reduce the 8 characters, no caps, right? So,
well, and so the third-party risk management around that was like we could move to sales, we could move to any of the ERP systems that were way more robust, but the business impact to rip and replace was a multi-year project.
Right.
It involved every single department along the chain, from engineering to shipping to sales. And we all knew it was a problem. Like if you were trying to describe and have a description of an 8-inch subwoofer in the wall, colored black, that had this, that, and the other, you couldn't do it with 8 characters. So like you were saying, Jesse, being able to identify the risk and the business problem that you're trying to solve, then eventually getting into, all right, how are we managing that risk? And this is not even cyber risk that we're talking about. It's just business risk in general.
Right. Yeah.
But Tim, how does
I would imagine you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. How does the government deal with third-party risk management? Since you've got a lot of experience there, right? And they actually do kind of a pretty good job. So.
Yeah, there are, NIST is a pretty definitive source on some things, third-party risk management. I would say the industry as a whole has done an extremely horrible job of defining it, of actually having a standard, actually having some, controls or some things. I would say this is an industry-wide problem. And one of the reasons why I just haven't rolled it into our platform is because there is no source of truth. I can go to 853. I can go to, CIS. I can go to framework XYZ and have a source of truth. I can't do that for third-party risk management. I have all kinds of fluffy guidance, but no definitive questionnaire.
Wait, Tim, you could say I'm only going to use FedRAMP high vendors or something like that, right? Or like,
Or I could have compensating controls.
yeah, right. I mean, well, compensating controls if you want to have affordable IT. Yeah, but they seem to be doing a good job, right? They are imposing their will on suppliers. I don't think a small manufacturer like Jesse's talking about can do that, but the military does.
I mean, I might counter that with, yes, they have a list of security controls that test the efficacy and validity of a thing. But those control lists, whether it's 853, dash 60, whatever it is, it doesn't take into consideration like what is third party risk, right? It doesn't talk about the log4js. Like log4j happened because we had no idea of the third party risk up and down, third, fourth, 18th party risk up and down the chain, because there was no standard that we could all adhere to and look at.
Right.
I don't know, Jesse, what are your thoughts? I'm rambling.
Yeah. So no, it's a sticky wicket because I actually agree with the guidance approach, and here's why. I think there's no definition for third party risk. Well, I mean, third party risk is just it's business risk to your organization from someone other than yourself. That's the way I would define it, right? But you have to, what does that look like for you? I think organizations have to make some determinations there. Simple things like 3 levels of classification. And maybe that's what you're saying is like, I want to see standards for 3 levels of classification, right? There's trust centers that you can do, but trust centers are almost becoming more of a problem than questionnaires.
The band has broken up. We're done here.
You know what I'm sharing here, right, Tim?
Yeah, this is a FedRAMP marketplace.
Right. So
right.
And what am I looking at right there? So clearly it's not bulletproof.
And last thought on that is that you have to define what it means for your organization based on your risk tolerance. So would I like to see more guidance? I don't know. I think I'd like to see, well, so here's a great example. SBOMs, right? We were promised that SBOMs were going to be the solution. Have they made really any measurable difference? No, at least not from my chair, not the companies that I'm working with, right? Now I know there's some organizations out there that do it really well, but are even 5% of the companies equipped to take an SBOM and actually look at it and determine the risk that it presents? No, I don't think so, right?
Thanks, Tim. Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least SBOM is software bill of material. SBOM is one mechanism of looking at third-party risk. Log4j, that's kind of where that came out of, right? There was this thing in Log4j, and it had multiple different spiders, and monitoring the packages or your software bill of materials that are part of your own supply chain and where that fits. Software bill of materials is one mechanism, right? One risk treatment, I think, Jesse, was to use your words, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I'll go back to the MSP. All right, so we had a business problem. We identified the business problem. We identified the problems we were trying to solve, the must-haves, the feature set, the things. Great. We narrowed it down to a list of 10 vendors, and then I got in the conversation with each of the vendors. And my questionnaire, I mean, Tim, you remember my questionnaire, right? It was almost 100 questions long. And 9 times out of 10, they would never fill it out.
So what does that mean? Right. Yeah.
But what it did was it took me, and I'm saying me personally, because I always, it wasn't us, it was me. It took me into the conversation with the right people and out of that sales conversation, because when we're doing these things, you're 9 times out of 10, you're talking to the salesperson, you're talking to a sales engineer. You're not necessarily talking to the people that understand their own internal risk. And so it got me out of that sales cycle and into the conversation with the CISOs, with the V people, with the C people, so that I can be like, hey, we really like your product, but I need these things. These are my must-haves, right? Like, Tim, you pulled up FedRAMP. Great. Maybe FedRAMP was a thing. We'd identified, out of Tim's 100 questions, I really give a crap about 8 of them, but I want to filter out everybody else and get down to the 3 or 4 vendors that are willing to have the risk conversation. And then we would make that internal determination on whether we mitigate, transfer, accept, or defer those risks.
Yeah.
And
So
for
if
us, it was all about the
send you an
data.
NDA, it's a good sign.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody keeps asking me to republish now that the website and all that for the MSP is gone. Everybody keeps asking me to republish my form. I should do that one of these days.
Jesse, do you want to explain what's in an SBOM and how a MSP can use that information to better, feel better about the risk, remediate, I guess, like.
So really what it is it's a list of software packages that a SaaS or other application vendor uses to build their product. Like, as we know from Log4j, we have these open source packages that are used to build out proprietary software. So what this does, this allows you as the MSP to look at a SaaS vendor and say, here's all the open source packages they're using. And if you're really, on top of your game, you're keeping tabs on, are there vulnerabilities in those software packages? And if there is a vulnerability, did this vendor patch it with the latest patch and, the defined SLA for whatever criticality patches you have with them? Someone who talks about this all the time and is a great follow on LinkedIn is Walter Haydock. He was a vocal advocate of this and actually has a platform that does some of that, that package monitoring. And obviously I don't get paid to say that. I know we're not plugging people on this show, but he would always stick in my mind as someone who's very vocal. And I think stands about that. Right. So hopefully that's a little bit educational.
Yeah.
Now,
and
the last piece to that is we're so not even there yet.
Yeah. So if I'm an MSP, do I just say like, all right, well, give me a piece of that software and stick it in my sandbox and throw a vulnerability agent a scanner at it? Or is it, I'm trying to save time. I'm trying to triage and talk about an effective approach, right, to actually using an SBOM, right? Or is it easier to use the SBOM, or is it easier just to kind of download the software and be like, what do my tools say? This is great. Or like, this vendor looks like turd, right? So Tim, and you could jump in as well, like, right? Like, how'd you do it at the MSP? Because you guys were
there were certain things that were non-negotiable, right? So whether we were dealing with a federal customer or not a federal customer, sort of that's the first component, right? So let's pick on non-federal customers, since that's mostly of our MSP audience. And, a non-negotiable for us was who has access to the data? Where is that data stored? How are you protecting that data? Where are we uploading? Are we syncing? Are we whatever? Like, for us, when we were trying to evaluate new tools or replacing of tools or whatever, after we've done our own internal due diligence, after we've done our own non-negotiables, then the conversation with the vendor was, here are our non-negotiables. Out of the 8 or 800, like, what boxes can you prove that you can do? A lot of that was around the data, right? Depending on the tool, depending on the thing, like tell us how you plan to, like, who are your sub processors, right? How is that protected? What are your, and then, so all of protection pieces.
Yeah.
On the other side of that was, what does your response look like? You know, SLA, uptime, incident handling, you know, how does that chain work? You know, so one side of it was, where's the stuff and how are you protecting it? And on the other side was, great, what happens when the poop hits the fan? And that's how we would kind of approach at least bringing on new tools or vendors or whatever.
Yeah. And I think that incident response side is growing. I think where's my data? Is it in AWS East? Is it wherever? Like, because there's always a jurisdiction problem for GDPR and HIPAA and things like that. So, but Jesse, I know there's a little bit of a lag. So
yeah. Speaking of risk, who knows what's going on? I should have rebooted when we were having this issue before we hopped on. But you know, so just to talk, I know we're kind of nerding out on like SBOMs and like a list of open source. I mean, are we even there where we can start talking about that stuff, or is that just pie in the sky? I mean, really, for an MSP, our MSPs taking, and well, MSPs and vendors alike, are we taking and just vetting our vendors and having a risk register for the vendors that we're using? I would say that's not prevalent, right? And I get it because there's such vendor sprawl in a lot of places, but I think the basics that we can do is start with a questionnaire that's short and identifies, like Tim said, those 8 questions, 8 or 9 things we want to get answers on, and try and get that at least done. And that's where you start. Like if you're talking about start somewhere, begin with the asset inventory, like you said, Tim, right? And then start to break that down into a couple categories, right? Is it a transactional vendor? Is it a medium risk vendor, or is it a high risk vendor? You know, so transactional might be somebody you trade information with, like a recruiter or something like that. Medium risk could be somebody that you use their software to connect to, you know, medium sensitive data or something like that. And then a high risk could be your RMM vendor, right? Something like that.
Yep. Just back into the last like 5 headline breaches, right, Jesse? So,
So
yeah, and we didn't talk about like, why are we talking about TPRM, right? Like, because it is, I don't think we talked about the brevity of it and just like the fact that it is like headline news, right? Like SolarWinds, Kaseya, CrowdStrike.
I hate to, you know, plug one of my recent LinkedIn posts, but I'm going to do it anyways. You know, we are heading down a path here, compliance scorecard, getting in different marketplaces globally, not just the big ones that you might be thinking when I say the word marketplace. And, you know, in my infinite wisdom, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, oh my God, I have this thing I have to fill out to get into marketplace in Timbuktu. And I open up the online application and it is literally 67 pages. And I'm sitting here at 4 in the morning, which is, by the way, my golden hour, when I think the most clearest, when I work the best. You know, yes, between 1 and 7 a.m. is when I think my clearest. Okay. And I'm looking at this thing that's 67 pages long. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, first off, don't they know I'm a compliance company? I mean, I was surprised to see that once we got through all the demographic and the structure and the legalese, like the first set of real questions. Oh, we just lost Jesse. So the first set of real questions were all around policy and procedure. So I was really excited. Like they started asking like my wheelhouse. But as I droned my way through this, I was like, oh my God. Like, I hate to use, you know, oh my God, but the like, how can we expect as an MSP ourselves or our clients having to deal with 67 pages of questions, right? Hey, Jesse, you're back. That looks a little better. You're like, oh my God, I can see your face. Hey, third-party risk has been mitigated. with the quick reboot. Still hasn't fixed the lag. And Tim, you're on mute. We're just all over the place. We are way
my
out of
the daughter's in and out, the dog's coming in and out. So
Yeah.
yeah, Jesse, you're back, so it's good.
Yeah. And then my VPN connects right as you were saying, oh, it's looking better.
Yeah, we had some pretty good comments we posted about this episode, right? Like, I think this trend of using less vendors, and Jesse, you said vendor sprawl, right? So
Yeah.
just in the law of numbers, like if you go to a wedding that has 10 people, like, I don't know, are you going to get sick, or are you going to like get some,
Right.
right? Like, and then you go to a football game that's got 50,000 people, right? So,
Right.
just the law of numbers and like how much software and attack surface you're introducing to your business obviously increases your third-party risk management. So, a lot of thoughts, and I know we're like all over the map here, but Jesse, now that you're
Well,
back on time.
yeah, I love that topic. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because there is that piece, but then you have to consider what risks are you taking on by having all your data in one place and having all your eggs in one basket. Well, CrowdStrike showed you what that looks like, right? So, and then Microsoft hasn't demonstrated that they are exactly security forward lately either. I mean, they've had, Russia's been in the wire for, I think they finally kicked them out, right? But there's that whole piece going on too. And what came of that? Nothing. Like, what changed there? So they have not demonstrated that they've been super good about security. And again, they're large organizations, so you're going to deal with that. But so you look at both of those. What do you do?
Yeah.
No response to that.
Go ahead,
Tim. Hold on. IGN. Hold on.
Jesse, having all your eggs in one basket.
Hold on. All my phones are ringing. I don't know what's going on. Sorry. No, I was going to say. I have a response for that.
This is part of your act.
Secure by design. Who's familiar with Secure by Design?
Oh. Well, we'll all gather around the campfire and sing Secure by Design, and everything will be secure.
Well, you were just talking about Microsoft, right? And I'll grab the link. I can't. Yeah. Phones are ringing, things are happening, but the Secure by Design pledge that came out from CISA, right? Microsoft, Google, in fact, us and some of our competitors and friends, like this Secure by Design pledge that we all signed, Microsoft included, talked about, restricting default passwords, talked about CVEs and becoming a CNA, numbering authority, talks about like these 8 things. Now, enforcing 2-factor by default or multi-factor. I mean, that's the new phrase. Yeah. Right. WA. Damn, what the hell's going on? What's going on here?
You're spammed all the time.
We'll shake the rust off here before you know it.
Yeah.
Anyways, TLDR, Secure by Design pledge from CISA. That is not like the be all end all, but it's a step forward, right? You mentioned Microsoft, right? We have all long since been beating our drum, thumping our chest. Like, why do I have to go back in any new Microsoft tenant and set up 100,000 different things to be secure by default? Like, but that's changing.
Right. Yeah.
Those wheels take a little time, right? And Tim, you've mentioned this in the past. The reason why they are so open is what? Why are they not secure by design?
Because of friction. It's a trade-off. So, perfect example, right, Tim? I'm on Tim's tenant right now for our streaming platform because I literally locked myself out of my Acquisitive IT because I use all the CIS benchmarks for Chrome, Zach, Sention, and you can't stream, you can't download, you can't screen share. So I'm using a passkey. Congratulations, StreamYard, and it's flipping me over to my other tenant, and I'm pretty good at I totally failed the friction versus security balance. So that's securitized on. There's a reason, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to wonder when they do make those changes, are there going to be organizations that are left out in the cold because they haven't adapted? So I think you have to look at that from a risk perspective as well, right?
That's a really good point.
That's why you got to take the easy wins when you get them, right? Like passwordless and things that are kind of no brainers. Yeah.
We talked about before, like how the manufacturer, right? That it took this 3 or 2 year relationship that it took to spin up, right? So when you find something, and Tim, you talked about this database that had these 8 character passwords, you're like, well, we need to do it. It would be years. Like, so, but what's the plan, right? Are we creating some sort of plan to slowly fix it? Because I think that's the difference, and that's where the problem is. And
Right.
as in technology in general and in business in general, it's like we identify this issue and we're like, oh, there's nothing we can do about it, but we need to start planning and actually moving something forward to fix that down the road. I'm not saying pull the plug today, but we have to start making some sort of contingency plan at that point, right?
Right. And again, when I think of third-party risk management, I think of you need to have a plan and a process in place before you even start to do your vendor due diligence, before you even start to answer stupid security questionnaires.
Yeah.
And as MSPs, we know you get those questionnaires all the time. My question to you and my pushback is, should you even be answering them? It's just like the insurance questionnaire. Should you even be answering third-party risk management questionnaires? Let alone there's no standard, there's no nothing, like all that other stuff. My question to you is, if you are answering third-party risk management vendor due diligence questionnaires on behalf of your customer, what risk are you taking on by answering that for your customer?
That's a
Tim,
great
I'll tell you how that
point.
plays out.
I think this is
yeah, right. So clearly you haven't talked about the risk you were taking when you engaged this client, right? So they're just expecting you to manage their IT, and filling out that insurance form is part of that job. So you have mispriced yourself given the risk that you were taking at large. So
yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say too, Tim, is that this is why I harp on vCISO services, of course, because that's what you're getting paid to do, is take on that risk. And honestly, if you're doing it well, you're not taking on additional risk because you're sitting down with the client and acting as their interpreter and their guide. And you're saying, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Client, this is what this question is asking. Here's what we're providing you. Here's a delta that I need you to tell me that you're doing. And then here's how I would advise answering that question based on all this information we have. Now, that's a very time-consuming process to do, and why you need to get paid to do it. And it's not like included with vCIO services, right?
Jesse, I've never heard it so concise right there. I love it. So what's the difference between vCIO and vCISO?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Jesse, you hit on a really hot hold on, damn it. You hit on, I'm doing it. Here we go. You hit on a really hot topic. Getting paid to do assessments? Like, really?
Right.
Oh my God. So, all right, enough of that. So, yeah, the first and foremost, I'm going to say it again, should you even be doing that work? If you decide that you want to do that work for your customers, it is part of that scope of work, then you damn better well be getting paid to do that work. right? And I use this analogy all the time. How many of you can bring your car or your tractor, Jesse, to the mechanic and get it fixed and diagnosed for free? Jesse, do you get free diagnostics on your tractor?
No, sir, I don't.
Right?
What about the doctor's
So-
diagnosis?
Right? I can't go to the doctor without a copay, without a fee, without like. So why should we, as highly trained, highly technical people specialized in our field, not get paid to do that work? All right, I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah.
Don't do it, and if you do it, mitigate your
Well,
own risk.
I think up to this,
Charge for it. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I think up to this point, it's been something that has been a fear of upsetting the apple cart that MSPs have had with their clients, right? I mean, you look at just 3 years ago, clients, the majority of clients were saying, well, don't you do this for us already? And people were saying, well, we have to include it. They think we do it. I think we're in a completely different atmosphere in the last year or 18 months, right? I think clients are actually becoming much more educated. And I know there's still problem clients out there. I know there's still clients that are, of that old mentality. I get it, that those still exist. I'm not saying that problem's completely gone, but I'm just telling you from being on the front lines and seeing the conversations that MSPs are having with customers, customers are asking about this stuff. And if they're not getting the answers they want, they're going elsewhere. You're seeing churn because of this, right? So I think that we're hanging on to this old sentiment of it. We're too scared to ask the client to get paid when actually the client might actually want us to ask about these services because they're thinking about them, right? And they don't know how to bring it up. So just my 2 cents from what I'm seeing there.
That's very interesting. So what you're saying, Jesse, is
Yeah.
so shift. So maybe Team Tim is having an impact after all.
Well,
There we go again with my stupid camera. But yes, maybe.
yeah. We talk about that all the time, Tim. I mean, my
we're
first
done
channel
here.
conference was 2021, and Jesse, there was not a mention of NIST, not a mention of CIS, not a mention of any framework, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was firewalls and there was EDR and even Duo,
There was-
even MFA was
All the standard sell a product to make MRR. And now the shift left conversation of being proactive, of
Mhm.
having the risk conversation. Jesse, you just said it. It's starting to happen at our customers.
Yeah.
Now, it's probably 0% market penetration at the end customer level,
Right.
but it'll get there.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's happening though, Jesse? It's not because Team Tim's been here every Friday barking on the proactive. Why do you see that?
keep throwing
I
those
think-
softballs up.
Yeah. No, I think it's because the attacks are just ramping up and people are seeing effects. It's like
I think it's insurance, and I think it's due diligence forms coming to them and be like, why am I getting these due diligence forms?
yeah,
Because of third-party risk management.
yeah, yep. And
Softball, hit home run.
and you're seeing increased regulatory burdens too, right? Regulations are not stopping. They're not slowing down. They're becoming a cost of doing business. I mean, you look at CMMC, like that's happening. And I know, Tim, like we'll let the courts fight it out based on can they actually enforce it or not. But I think, well, maybe we
Come to
table
New
that.
York City. See how many people are paying to ride the subway.
Right. Yep, exactly. Compliance is here. And so it's just becoming a water cooler conversation at the end of the day. It's becoming a boardroom conversation, and it's becoming an ownership conversation, like in their clubs cost. There you go. In the circles of business decision makers, it's being talked about, and that's always going to drive adoption, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, Jesse, and I
That
think
because they're listening to us
industry
every Friday.
conferences, yeah, they're go to a dental conference, go to a heart surgery conference, go to a whatever logistics or industrial, machines. Like they're gonna have a cyber truck.
Yeah. Well, I always tell the story that I really see it as the same tipping point that happened with computers in the 90s. Go ahead. What?
Tell your story about the computers in the 90s.
Well, no, I was going to say, I always see it as the same thing that happened with computers in the 90s and how they became table stakes for doing business. I still remember very clearly that my dad, who was an operations manager at an HVAC company, put in a Windows NT network to do billing via, a digital system because it would save efficiency and save a bunch of time and make the company money. And people were up in arms. They're like, we don't need these computers to do our jobs. Billing on paper works just fine. Imagine saying that now. And that was 30 years. That was just 30 or 40 years ago. Right. Imagine we're getting to that point with security now where we're at that tipping point, and imagine going into a business and saying, I don't need security to do my job. We got antivirus. That's good enough. Now there's still some people, there's a sect out there saying that, but they are definitely in the minority. And so I think we're seeing that tipping point begin to happen. And just as, progress always marches on, cybersecurity and risk and shifting left is becoming a topic of conversation and a business imperative.
Great points. So let's recap, right? So the band did not break up. We were all affected by outside third-party risk, whether it was conferences, travels, moving, whatever. Yeah. And it, part of this leading into today's call was beyond just the cyber risks that we face as an MSP and that our customers face, beyond the technology risks, there's a lot more around third-party risk management that has absolutely nothing to do with ones and zeros, bytes and bits and software, right? So we're back with a wink next week, still a bit of a wink, but we're back. We love that the fact that, Jesse, you're hearing boots on the ground that, things are starting to look a little bit better in the MSP space. Customers are asking for it. Tim's got some really cool things happening over there, with the exception of locking himself out of his own browser. And, I have only 2 or 3 conferences left for the year. But nice. At this point, that might change. But, third-party risk management is a disaster, in my opinion. Until we as a community can come together and start to define what that is, it's like, who's the guy? Larry Flint? I can't tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it. So as we wind down here in the last 5 or 6 minutes, we always try to have a key takeaway. Since Jesse, you're up over on that side of the screen, I'm going to let you go first with our key takeaway.
All right. I would say my key takeaway is that, yes, it is a disaster, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything. So I think being pragmatic and taking some initial easy steps to categorize your vendors, discover your vendors, have a change management policy for when you change vendors, and do a review a couple times a year. That's a good place to start with yourself and your clients to get better about your risk and at least have your finger on the pulse of a third-party risk management program.
That's awesome. I love the fact, you tied in a couple of things. Documentation is obviously near and dear to my heart, right? It doesn't have to be. Well, it doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be done.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, what, while I'm on my tangent, I'll go next, right? Third-party risk management is a pain in the ass. We all know it. There is no standard. And until we as a community can come together and kind of flesh out at least some common baseline 8, 10, 20, less than 50 type of questions to identify actual areas of risk beyond the ones and zeros and the bytes and bits. Third-party risk management, vendor due diligence, and those assessments are always going to be troubling for the MSP. And I would say, and here's my takeaway. Number one, make sure your MSA, your statement of work, and your SOW, make sure all of your documentation is solid. And if it's not, refuse to do them. And if it is, charge for them. Charge time and materials, right? Because you don't know how long it will take. And lastly, for the love of all things God and holy, don't use AI. Right? Answering these third-party risk questionnaires using AI will never be able to give you or your customer that human decision-making process on identifying a risk and how you want to apply a risk treatment to it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm off my soapbox. Mr. Schnurr, your key takeaway.
Yeah. So when I think about third-party risk management, think about you do everything right in your firm. You're doing CIS controls. You did all the right things. You turned on MFA and you classified information and you governed and you delegated and you did everything right. But you, at the end of the day, you still got breached because a partner or a vendor got breached. So when I think about third-party risk management, I think about simplicity. Think about cars, right? Think a Range Rover or a Porsche are really complex when a Volkswagen might be really easy, right? Really simple. So the simplest design is the best design, the most efficient. So yeah, I mentioned this earlier with Jesse talking about, Microsoft, AWS, Google, right? The big guys, and using less vendors, I think is really important. I think we're going to see a world where MSPs slim down vendors. We're already seeing this at big banks, Fortune 500 companies, where they're extremely strict, right? Like they're trying to reduce attack surface area, reduce vendors they work with, make things simple, make things smaller, get themselves smaller. So I think we'll continue to see this trend where, AI, Tim, I think my eyes rolled around because I was like, you're trying to simplify things and then you're going to throw AI into the mix where you don't even know what's in the black box or where that data is going. So, just try to simplify things and try to understand to the best you can where, as you said, where your data is, who has access to it, and how is it being protected in those areas. So I think we'll continue to see vendors slimming and we'll see much, fewer vendors. Jesse talks about that's still, you're never going to be 100% safe. And I think we saw that with CrowdStrike, last month or a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was, but less vendors and third-party risk management. It's a very, very difficult thing to deal with. It's a disaster, as Tim said. And, I don't know, when we talk about where to start here, I think Tim's third-party risk management list, which he has one, and make sure you get it from him, is worth a start. And Jesse probably has one as well. So
I'm sure Jesse does.
I have a question there.
Yeah, you don't want mine. It's too big. I haven't actually. That's a whole nother conversation.
You need like an IG1, IG2, IG3 kind of like TPRM list.
Actually, I do. All right, TLDR. And now I learned my lesson because of 3 weeks ago. I started working with a very large organization to start to build out third-party risk management and vendor due diligence. What is it? What's in it? What's it do? Blah, blah, blah. Who is it? How do we build questionnaires, policy, process, procedure, the whole 9 yards. Mm-hmm. We started a year ago down this path. Let's just say they are not the peach of Georgia at the moment. I will just leave that there with the peachy nugget of who I might have been conversing with to figure this out, and part of their doctoral candidates that are no longer there. So I started down the route a year ago, and thank God I stopped, knowing what happened just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, geez.
Let's just say I'm going to whistle my way through figuring out third-party risk management.
Hey, Tim, what do they say in New England? In Belichick, I trust. I mean, right? Microsoft, I trust, or Google for that matter.
Yeah, funny.
All right, everybody. So we'll be back next week. We're still lining up the speaker. We're always open for speakers. Feel free to reach out to us on teamtim.live or direct message any of us. Do the like, share, follow things. And hey, it is a holiday weekend. It is a Friday. It has a Monday. Damn it. Do your third-party risk management, because we know what happens on holiday weekends. Be safe. Be safe, everybody. Enjoy those burgers and dogs. Spend time with your family, and we will see you next week.
Subscribe now.